My daughter-in-law looked me dead in the eyes across that conference room table and said, "You're 67 years old, Thomas. You don't need to be running a business anymore. Sign it over to Derek and enjoy whatever time you have left." She actually said that. 9 days after we buried my wife. I remember looking down at my hands, the same hands that had swung a hammer on every job site from Columbus to Cincinnati for 30 years. The same hands that had held my wife's while she took her last breath, and I thought about smiling. I thought about what I knew. I thought about the manila folder sitting in my lawyer's office 12 miles away. And then I looked up at my daughter-in-law and I said, "Let's wait for the formal reading. That's the right way to do this." She did not like that answer. Her name is Vanessa. She married my son Derek 11 years ago. And for 11 years I tried. I genuinely tried to love her, the way my wife Dorothy always insisted I should. Dorothy was like that. She found something worth protecting in every person she met, even the ones who didn't deserve it. She used to squeeze my hand at Sunday dinners and whisper, "Be patient with her, Thomas. She's scared of what she doesn't understand." I was patient. For 11 years, I was patient. But patience has a memory. And mine is very long. Dorothy and I built Caldwell Hardware together. That's important, because my son and his wife seem to have forgotten it. We opened the first store in 1,987 inches, a rented building on Maple Street in Dayton with $14,000 we'd saved, and a credit line from Dorothy's father that we paid back within 3 years. Dorothy ran the books. I ran the crews, managed the suppliers, drove the forklift when the delivery guy didn't show up. We worked 16-hour days and took our first real vacation in 1994, a long weekend in Tennessee, because we finally had enough people we trusted to leave the place alone for 4 days. By the time Dorothy got sick, we had 4 locations, 18 full-time employees, and a reputation in the region that had taken us 35 years to build. Derek joined the business in 2018. His idea, not mine. He came to us with a PowerPoint presentation. I'm not joking. An actual PowerPoint about modernizing operations and expanding into Columbus. Dorothy and I talked about it for a long time. We had concerns. Derek had always been bright but restless, the kind of man who started things enthusiastically and finished them inconsistently. But he was our son, and Dorothy believed in second chances and third ones. And so we brought him in as operations manager at a salary that made some of our longtime employees raise an eyebrow. For a while it seemed to work. Derek was charming with the vendors, good with the younger staff. He had ideas. Some of them were even good. But Vanessa had ideas too. About 18 months after Derek started, Dorothy mentioned to me one evening that she'd noticed some irregularities in the accounts. Small amounts at first. Vendor invoices that didn't match purchase orders. A consulting fee paid to a company she didn't recognize. She didn't say anything to Derek right away. That was Dorothy's way. She gathered information quietly. The way you'd gather kindling before you decided whether to start a fire. She hired a private forensic accountant named Gerald without telling me. She didn't tell me because she knew I would confront Derek immediately. And she wanted to know the full picture first. She told me all of this 14 months later, when she was already in treatment and we were having the kinds of conversations that people have when they understand time is becoming a limited resource. "I didn't want to break your heart before I knew for certain," she said. She was sitting up in bed with the quilt her mother had made her pulled up to her waist, and she looked at me with those brown eyes I'd been looking into for 41 years, and she handed me a document that was 37 pages long. Derek and Vanessa had been running a side company called Apex Supply Solutions. On paper, it was a legitimate vendor. In practice, Caldwell Hardware had been paying Apex Supply Solutions for services and materials that were either grossly overpriced or never delivered at all. Gerald estimated that over 14 months, somewhere between $190,000 and $230,000 had moved from our business accounts into a company that Derek and Vanessa controlled. I sat on the edge of that bed for a long time without saying anything. Dorothy put her hand on my arm. "I've already talked to Robert," she said. "Robert is our attorney. Robert has been our attorney since 1992. Everything is in order. I just need you to trust me and not do anything until the right moment." I wanted to confront my son that same night. I wanted to drive to his house and stand in his driveway and ask him what kind of man steals from his parents. I wanted to ask him if he remembered being 12 years old and sitting in the back of our truck eating sandwiches on job sites because we couldn't afford a babysitter. If he remembered Dorothy making his Halloween costume by hand 3 years running because the store-bought ones were $12 we didn't have. But I had promised Dorothy. And I had never broken a promise to that woman in 41 years. So I waited. Dorothy passed on a Tuesday morning in early October. Peacefully. Which is a word that sounds small but means everything when you've watched someone fight. Our daughter Claire had come in from Portland 2 weeks earlier and never left. She slept in the guest room and made soup and read to her mother in the evenings and held her hand through the nights at the end. Derek came on weekends. Vanessa came twice. The funeral was on a Friday. 230 people showed up, which didn't surprise me at all. Dorothy had touched that many lives and more. On the following Monday, 6 days after we buried her, 6 days, Derek called me and said he thought we should get together to talk about the business. I said, of course. He said Vanessa would join us. I said, of course, again. He suggested the conference room at their real estate agent's office, which I found interesting. Neutral territory. His idea of neutral territory. I called Robert that afternoon. He said everything was ready. He said he'd be at the meeting. I called Claire that evening. She said she'd be there too. She had been gentle and quiet through the whole terrible month of her mother's illness and death. My daughter, steady the way deep water is steady. She said, "Dad, are you sure you're okay to do this?" And I told her, I had never been more sure of anything in my adult life, except marrying her mother. The conference room had a long table and windows that looked out onto a parking lot. Derek was already there when I arrived, sitting at the head of the table, which told me something. Vanessa was beside him in a charcoal blazer with her hair pulled back, a legal pad in front of her, and a pen in her hand, like she was prepared to take notes or sign documents. Robert came in behind me. Claire came in a minute after that, and I saw Vanessa glance at her with something behind her eyes that might have been calculation. Derek stood up and hugged me and said he was sorry. He was so sorry. Mom was incredible. He looked like he meant it. That was always Derek's gift. He could look like he meant things. Then we sat down, and Vanessa leaned forward with both hands flat on the table, and she said it. The thing she had clearly been rehearsing. About me being 67. About not needing to run a business anymore. About signing it over to Derek and enjoying whatever time I had left. The room was very quiet when she finished. Robert opened his briefcase. Claire folded her hands. I said, "Let's wait for the formal reading. That's the right way to do this. What happened next is the part I want you to understand clearly, because it matters that you see exactly who these people were." Derek looked at his wife. Vanessa looked at her legal pad. Then she looked back up at me and said that the formal reading wasn't necessary, that they already had an understanding with Dorothy about the succession of the business, and that it would be simpler for everyone, especially for me, given what I was going through emotionally, to just handle it now. An understanding with Dorothy, I said. That's right. What kind of understanding? Derek spoke with her about it. Several times. She agreed that when the time came, it made sense for Derek to take over operations. I looked at my son. He looked at the table. She agreed, I said. Yes. I nodded slowly. Robert put a file on the table. Claire still had her hands folded. I reached into my jacket pocket and set my phone on the table, and I pressed play. Dorothy's voice filled that conference room like sunlight comes through a window you've forgotten about, sudden and warm and completely real. She had recorded it 3 months before she died, sitting at the kitchen table in the house we'd shared for 38 years, wearing her blue cardigan, her reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. Gerald, the accountant, had helped her set up the camera. She was very calm. She spoke for 22 minutes. She explained what she had found. She explained the Apex Supply Solutions arrangement in detail, the invoice numbers, the amounts, the dates, the discrepancies. She explained that she had engaged Gerald, that Gerald's full forensic report was included in the estate documentation, and that copies had been provided to Robert and held in escrow pending the reading of her will. She explained that she had confronted Derek in August, privately, and given him the opportunity to return the money and resign quietly, and that he had promised to think about it and then done nothing. She explained that she was not angry. This was the part that broke me the first time I heard it, and it broke me again in that conference room. She said she was not angry. She was heartbroken. But that heartbreak and justice were not the same thing, and she had always known the difference. She said she loved her son. She said she hoped that someday he would become the man she had always believed he could be. She said she was sorry that Vanessa had made the choices she had made, and she hoped Vanessa understood someday what she had cost her family. And then she looked directly at the camera and she said, "Thomas, if you're watching this in that room, I want you to know that I have taken care of everything. I love you. I have always loved you. Don't you dare spend 1 minute of whatever comes next in grief. Go live. That's an order. Go, go, go." The room was absolutely silent. Vanessa's legal pad was on the floor. I don't know when she dropped it. Robert began the formal reading. Dorothy had structured the will with the kind of thoroughness that had always been her signature. The house and all personal property came to me, fully and without condition. A college fund she had quietly established went to Derek and Vanessa's 2 children, her grandchildren, who had not chosen their parents and did not deserve to suffer for their choices. A donation to Dayton Children's Hospital, her jewelry to Claire, her recipe books and her mother's quilt to Claire, her car to Claire, Caldwell Hardware, all 4 locations, all assets, all inventory, all accounts, the full operational structure of the business that she and I had built. From $14,000 and 35 years of early mornings went to Claire. Not to Derek. Not to me. To Claire. I had known this was coming. Dorothy had told me in that same conversation when she handed me Gerald's 37 pages. She had explained her reasoning, which was Dorothy's reasoning, which was always clear and always fair. Claire had a business degree she'd never fully used. Claire was steady. Claire had been quietly helping with the books remotely for 3 years, asking for nothing, just helping because she loved her parents. Dorothy said, "She's the one who deserves it, Thomas, and she's the one who will protect what we built." She was right. She was always right. Derek stood up. He said this was insane. This was not what Mom wanted. This was a mistake. He said it louder the second time. He looked at me and said, "Dad, you knew about this? You knew and you didn't say anything?" I said, "Your mother asked me to trust her." I trusted her. Vanessa had gone very still. I had watched her face during the recording, and I had watched it during the reading. And what I saw happen was the specific, terrible process of a person understanding that every plan they had made was dissolving in real time. The charcoal blazer, the legal pad, the pen. None of it mattered now, she said quietly. There must be grounds to contest this. Robert said, equally quietly, that there were not. That the will had been prepared and witnessed and notarized with complete legal rigor. That the forensic accounting report had been filed with the relevant authorities, and that a civil recovery action for the misappropriated funds was already underway. That Derek and Vanessa were welcome to consult their own attorney, which he recommended they do promptly. Derek looked at me one more time. I don't know what he was looking for. Anger, maybe. Something he could push against. But I wasn't angry. I was 67 years old and 3 weeks out from losing the woman I had loved my entire adult life, and I was sitting in a room where her voice had just been present, and what I felt was something much closer to peace than anger. I said, "Derek, I love you. I will always love you. But what you did to this family, to your mother, to this business that has consequences, I'm not the one who made those consequences. You are. Your mother gave you a chance. You chose not to take it." He left without saying anything else. Vanessa followed him. The door to the conference room closed, and then it was just me and Claire and Robert and the parking lot outside the window with the gray November sky above it. Claire came around the table and sat next to me and put her head on my shoulder the way she used to do when she was small, and neither of us said anything for a while. Robert packed up his briefcase with the quiet efficiency of a man who has been doing this work for a long time and has made his peace with the fact that families are complicated. Let me tell you what happened in the months after, because I think it matters. The civil case settled. Derek and Vanessa's attorney negotiated a repayment of $214,000. Gerald had landed in the middle of his estimate, paid out over 5 years. Derek resigned from the business. I'm told Vanessa's sister has let them stay in her spare room while they figure things out. I don't track it closely. That sounds cold, maybe, but it isn't. It's just that I spent 11 years tracking Vanessa's moods and adjusting my behavior accordingly, and I'm done spending energy in that direction. Claire moved back to Dayton. She sits in Dorothy's chair in the back office of the Maple Street location, the original one, the one we opened in 1987, and she runs Caldwell Hardware with a steadiness that makes me think Dorothy was looking at something in our daughter that I had been too close to see clearly. She calls me every morning at 8 o'clock. We have coffee sometimes. She's talking about opening a 5th location in Springboro, and when she laid out the numbers, I thought, Dorothy would have said yes to this. I told Claire that. She cried a little, and then she laughed and said, Mom told me to say yes too. She left me a note. Dorothy had left a note for Claire inside the recipe book. Handwritten, 3 pages. I haven't read it. That was between the two of them, and I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad I don't know what it says. Some things belong to the people they were written for. I sold the second truck, didn't need 2 anymore, and I bought a small travel trailer. Nothing fancy. 14 feet, sleeps 2, which I found funny for about 20 minutes and then stopped finding funny. I drove it out to the Smoky Mountains in the spring and parked it in a campsite with a creek nearby, and I sat outside in a folding chair for 4 days with a paperback novel and a lot of coffee, and I didn't think about Apex Supply. Solutions or conference rooms or charcoal blazers even. Once, I thought about Dorothy. I thought about the first job I ever brought her to, in the summer of 1985 before we were even married, how she had stood in the framing of a half-built house with sawdust in her hair and looked at the skeleton of the structure and said, I can see exactly what this is going to be. I had thought she meant the house. Later I understood she meant everything. She saw what things were going to be. She planned for it. She built it, and she protected it. And when the time came, she handed it to the right person. I am 67 years old. I have a travel trailer and a daughter who calls me every morning and a lawn at the house on Elmwood that needs attention every other Saturday and a stack of paperbacks on the nightstand. I have 41 years of a marriage that was real and full and better than anything I deserved. Some mornings I stand at the kitchen window with my coffee, and I can almost hear her. Not words, just presence. The way a room still holds warmth after someone has left it. I'm not going to waste what's left. She gave me an order,